In terms of big money being thrown around, it's been reported that Disney is buying out, or Disney is going to be purchasing more elements of Fox. And let me pull up the Gamasutra piece here. But as that's loading up, as we've seen, Disney has been on a roll with buying up major properties. Of course, LucasArts and Marvel, which all became folded into the Disney Infinity brand, which unfortunately that went kaput. I believe it was either this year or late last year. But Gamasutra seems to be having some trouble lately. Let's see. What is going on there? Everything looks good on the stream. Alright, so Disney bought Fox Entertainment for, oh my goodness, $71 billion. And let's see. And there's a lot of money thrown around there, but what it means for the game industry, or why it's being reported on Gamasutra, is that now Disney owns Fox Next, which is their game publishing side. Incidentally, one of the games that they now have is Marvel Strike Force, which is the game that I'm currently playing on mobile. Oh, that'll certainly be good. I know earlier this year people were joking about now that means that the Xenomorph Queen is now a Disney princess. I guess everybody's a Disney princess now. They will be in the next few years at the rate they're going. But what, of course, this means, besides giving Disney a lot more money and a lot more things to manage, is that it's once again going to bring in the question about what's going to happen with a lot of the games that have been licensed via Marvel. So, I think El Gordo is the one who told me about this earlier this week, that Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, which were kind of, I think they were made by Raven Software, and they were ARPG-style games, have been taken off of Steam. Probably because of the fact that the publishing ran out, and I think this deal has probably done more for it. Let's see. Is it available? Nope, there is no mention of it on Steam. Of course, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 comes up. And let me see, I'm curious. Deadpool, which was taken off and then put back on, is now, according to Steam, no longer available. And that is a very interesting thing. We've been talking about this before with the topics of backwards compatibility and game preservation. But as more games are being folded, or their IPs or licenses being moved around, shuffled, it does raise some very big questions regarding how to keep these games supported. Oh, there's a remastered version of Ultimate Alliance? Really? Oh yeah, I think, yeah, you're right. I remember hearing about that. Let me see here. Is there any mention of it on... Alright, so here it is on Xbox and PS4. And of course, people are reporting that the game has been removed. Yep. And like we've said, this isn't the first time. Oh, so the remastered versions were removed. And that really sucks, because for those of you who don't know, the Ultimate Alliance series is kind of the spin-off of X-Men. They did 2 X-Men related games. Was it by the same developer? I think it was. Raven Entertainment. Let's see. Was X-Men Legends? No, that can't be right. I think there was another one before that. Yeah, it was definitely not X-Men Legends, but it was in a similar vein. But Raven, let me get the right name there. Raven Software made several ARPG style games based on the X-Men license, and then followed that with the Marvel ones. Yeah, I saw a petition for that when I was looking it up, and the games had a pretty good feel to them. Again, this was long before anyone thought of a cinematic universe. I think this was still during. This must have been early to mid thousands, so nobody thought that this was still in the era when these games were considered separate properties. And the X-Men games were pretty good. They allowed you to control the different characters, and it allowed for like special team combinations, like the fastball special if you have Wolverine Colossus on your team, and there are several others as well. And they of course featured, I think, original stories exclusive to the game. And then the success of that gave them the leeway to do Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which was again kind of like, essentially it was like our Avengers game before the whole Avengers thing really took off. It allowed you to have, Spider-Man teaming up with Colossus, who was teaming up with the Thing, who was teaming up with Juggernaut, or all manner of craziness. And the games were very well reviewed, although from what we've been seeing, they did have some issues in terms of the PC versions. I'm pretty sure they were all console designed from the outset. But whenever it comes down to this, the issue came with the fact that, of course, with these games having license elements to them, what do you do when that license runs out? And of course, when you have these games who are no longer being really profitable, it doesn't make sense to retain that license. And then you have issues where even if the game is still available, if the developer is trying to patch it or make it compatible for up-to-date systems or DRM software, any additional work on that game is considered a breach of contract, because you technically don't have that license anymore, so you can't work on it. But if you can't work on it anymore, that means that you can't support it, which means that it gets taken off of the store. There's a Fantastic Four game? There's also a DC game. I remember that. I don't think it did as well. I don't know if Raven Software worked on that one. But they did one where you played as, I think it was Batman. Oh, I think it was Justice League. So you played as Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter. And again, I think that one just did okay. But they all involved you controlling multiple characters, so I think with the AI kind of picking up the slack. But when the AI isn't that good to begin with, it definitely causes those issues. But back to the topic, what ends up happening is that when you have these games that are no longer being viewed as profitable, and the developer or the publisher is trying to save some money, they're going to cut things loose. Now, a quick browse on Steam, if I type in Marvel right now, I can see what games are available. So we have Marvel Avengers, the Lego one, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which I'm sure that may be on the chopping block next. We got Lego Marvel Superheroes, lots of DLC for that. What the hell is this? Marvel End Time Arena. I don't even know what that game is. Oh, it's a good sign that the entire game's in Chinese. What the hell? And of course, people are playing it and they don't understand what anything is saying. It looks like a MOBA game. I'm sure that did well. Apparently it is. It's got mostly positive reviews on Steam. Yep, and some might even compare it to League of Legends there. Not sure what it is though, but it seems to be doing well. That's interesting. Let's see. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of DLC for Marvel's Avengers and Marvel vs. Capcom. I bet Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is not looking too fairly among Disney, especially considering the issues they had and the fact that it just failed to get that esports craze. Let's see. More Lego Marvel Avengers. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Oh, and here's Marvel Puzzle Quest. That was a game that I got hooked on for a while, but then I just got completely tired of it. As a very weird aside, apparently when I typed in Marvel, BioShock Infinite came up, as well as why is Jamestown? How are those two related? Jamestown is a shmup that was actually released by a developer right here in near me in Philadelphia, Final Form Games, which was a really great game, but they completely went over budget for it, and the studio closed following its release. But why is that coming up when I type in Marvel? What does that mean? But with that point, though, getting back to this topic at hand, it's getting more and more interesting to see how these games are being supported. We've talked about this before with backwards compatibility, but the fact is, for a lot of these studios who sign these IP arrangements or getting the IP rights to create these games or use them, that what happens when you support the game for months or years at a time. Most of these contracts are not written with any stipulations regarding that. Like, what if you have to support a game 6 years from now and the basic rights to the contract have ran out? We saw this issue with GTA and the licensed music, and how patching the game brought up the issue of the contract, and they couldn't renegotiate all the music fees, and that got canceled. And it's definitely a very nasty time. Speaking of which, of course, going back to the pinball arcade, it is still being hit very hard. Let me see. Yeah, they're still being hit hard because of the fact that they lost the Williams and I think the Bally games as well. And a lot of people are downvoting the game in response. And that's something that I don't think they're going to recover from anytime soon. Unless, of course, they decide, Williams decides to switch things over. But it's definitely a lose-lose situation for consumers. Now, one thing that I think is very interesting about this discussion, taking this back to Fox Next and so on, is that we've yet to see kind of a publisher or rights holder involvement in terms of changing the game. Usually they leave these games alone unless their profits start to dip, and then they'll take it off. But we rarely see them try and manage the development of the game going forward. And at least that is a small help there. But trying to see if there's any other news regarding this. Let's see. 5,000 jobs will be cut due to the takeover. Oh boy. Still amazing they're spending that much, that kind of deal is going through. Now, I guess here is a question for the folks watching this live or record while I'm reading some of these articles. Whenever we talk about these kinds of mergers going through, there is a great discussion about what it means for these monopolies to take over. And while a lot of people are happy that we may see, like when Sony got acquired, Sony sells some of their rights, that we saw Spider-Man or Marvel made Spider-Man Homecoming, but there's definitely something a little disconcerting about how one or two companies basically control everything. And there's discussions about this causing gatekeeping and even just making it a lot harder to work with these properties to begin with. For instance, when Marvel started to really take off, and of course they got bought by Disney a few years ago, this spelled the axe for several up-and-coming shows that were kind of handled outside of Marvel. Not Ultimate Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Both of them were basically operating as their own separate thing. But when Disney took over and they wanted to do more with the animation side, they basically took control. And those shows who were operating as their own specific things were canceled in favor of trying to streamline and put it all together in terms of Ultimate Spider-Man, and I forget the other name of the Avengers show. But this always raises some big questions. I'm curious what people think about this. When, like, we start seeing these big issues, seeing all these big properties be put under one roof. Now, as to take this back to the video game industry for a quick second, we of course have the Smash Brothers series as kind of, the copyrighted nightmare from Nintendo with all these various properties working together. But in that case, it's basically its own unique thing. Like, nobody else in Nintendo or one of their second or third parties are making a game like that with those characters. But I'm just wondering what this will mean going forward in terms of trying to do separate properties or separate new shows. Because there's been reports of how Disney prefers to keep all this stuff in-house, meaning that they don't want to license their property to a third-party developer for a game when they just have their own internal studio do it. And while there's no big issue with that, it does cut down, on the kind of creativity and uniqueness you can get when you have different studios having their own interpretation or their own style. I'm trying to think of some examples, and if you guys can think of any, let me know in the comments. But can you think of a case where a developer got access to a property and did something completely different or unique with it? I think one thing that could maybe be the case was the Wolverine Origins game, which a lot of people rated very highly as being better than the actual movie. Let's see. So, Disney is getting almost everything. The only things they're not going to get is the broadcast network. So, Fox News, Fox Business, and all that. And, of course, their sports programming. Oh, because Disney already owns ABC and ESPN. Oh my god. So I think at this point, maybe I should look forward to Disney buying me out at some point. Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't discount that one, Alordo, about seeing them trying to, almost like what we saw with the Lego games. You have Lego Lord of the Rings, Lego Batman, Lego Marvel, Lego Harry Potter. Pick 5 more Lego-related games, that Ninjago game. And how everything just starts to all be the same. And of course, Disney's Planet Earth. That is both funny and disconcerting all at once there. But again, we don't really know what Disney's game expertise is there. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Telltale has even done a few Marvel games as well. That's a big question right there. Telltale did the Guardians of the Galaxy game. I think they just did a second chapter earlier this year. But will Disney still let them have that license to keep making a Guardians of the Galaxy game? I don't know. And we've heard reports of issues at Telltale earlier this year when the CEO was ousted and he was saying that the split was not amicable. Oh, that would be great. Oh, good. Maybe we'll start seeing the Disney passes if you get ESPN. But yeah, we're seeing all those crazy synergies, or at least corporate synergies going on. For instance, earlier this year, Amazon bought Whole Foods. So now whenever I go Whole Foods, I see 27 different signs telling me to subscribe to Amazon Prime to get discounts while I'm shopping. And again, for the general consumer, this probably doesn't mean all that much to them. They may even see some benefits, as with the Amazon Prime discount or Amazon Prime subscription having more value. But again, when everything is being consolidated under one roof or a few roofs, it makes it harder for competition. If all the properties are basically being handled by Disney, then that means that who's going to really compete with them? And that's a really big question. I mean, who's really competing with Disney at this point in terms of their properties? They have Fox, they have Marvel, they of course have Disney, they have LucasArts. So who is really going to compete with them in terms of how they want to price their movies or their video games. There really isn't anybody. And when there is a general monopoly, that's usually more trouble for consumers because it means that they can control everything. They can set whatever price they want, and you can't really do anything about it. When we talked earlier, or a few weeks ago, about Nintendo's past and why everybody hated them during the NES and into the SNES era, it was because they basically had complete control over the industry for the longest time. And while that eventually did get shooken up with Sega, Sony, and of course Microsoft in the thousands, Nintendo had absolute domination for several years. And they swung that clout around like a giant wrecking ball. And what this means for Disney or Fox, Disney, Marvel, LucasArts at this point remains to be seen. But we've also had a discussion about this when Activision bought Blizzard, and now they're considered Active Blizzard. Active Blizzard? However we describe it. So, I don't play enough Blizzard games to really say whether or not that merger has affected them in terms of quality. But, again, it's always something in the backs of people's minds when this stuff happens. Now, I guess that's about it for this part. Again, I wish Rob was on, because with his background with producing games and even working at 2K with the NBA League, who's obviously that is a licensed property, it does raise questions about when these licenses get shifted around or moved. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else regarding this. Yeah, like with the sports games in particular, sports is this is probably where I wish Rob was on, because like maybe I'll ask him about this next week if he's feeling better. But because of the fact that many studios, they get the licensings from the major boards, so the NBA, the NFL, and MLB. Wait, what's it? MLB. There we go. That's how good I am at baseball. That once one studio gets it, that basically locks it up, unless you want to do a non-licensed game. But as we've said before, and I think this will be our final point for this topic, licensing is a very big deal. Yeah. And again, once a studio gets it, they're not going to give it up without a fight. I don't think EA is going to let their Madden or their NFL license lapse anytime soon. But when it comes to these kinds of licensing issues, when you're trying, or when it comes to the license side of things, it is a huge deal. When I spoke with John Brieger about this earlier, I think it was either late 2017 or early 2018, we talked about why license holdings or getting the rights to use a license is a huge win for developers, even though there is a cost to it. And the reason is that it brings brand recognition. You're not just selling your game anymore, you're selling that IP and all the fandom and support that it provides. Again, this is why it is a big deal for a studio to get the Marvel brand, or the X-Men license, or Spider-Man, or Star Wars, or you name it. Because your game now has multiple marketing points. And like we've seen before, there are people who will buy anything Marvel as they will buy anything Star Wars, or anything Disney, or and so on and so forth. And brand recognition is a major aid for developers. Like I said, when you have that support, you know the brand holder is going to also advertise your game for you, because why wouldn't they? If they have a property out there that they can make money off of, they're going to let people know. And going back to sports, for instance, again, the NFL makes a lot of money when it comes to licensing and making all their marketed stuff. Again, I live in New Jersey, which is pretty much considered part of Eagles territory. So do you know how many Eagles-related properties I have seen in my life? I've seen that Eagles green. It will haunt me until the day I die. And every one of those items being sold, at least in terms of a major retailer, you know the NFL gets some of that money back in terms of licensing fees. And again, with the fandom involved with that, Oh, by the way, speaking of that, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, basically Philadelphia stopped, or Pennsylvania just stopped for like a day or two. And there were people selling knockoff Eagles related merchandise on almost like every major corner around here. Now, while that stuff probably wouldn't be getting sold by the NFL, again, they know the power of branding. With the example earlier of Smash Brothers, again, there are people who are going to play Smash Brothers because it's a fighting game. There are people who are going to play because it's a Nintendo property. And there are people who are going to buy it simply because it features one of their favorite characters. From, again, Bayonetta, Metal Gear, Sonic, Fox, Pikmin. Again, there's probably like 40, 50 more I could start rambling off right now. But for smaller developers watching this is why, like, when we see developers kind of get contracted to work on a licensed game or a licensed property, that these brand holders become very protective. And they will make sure that you make the game of what they would like. They'll give you some leeway in it, of course. But if they say they want to make an E-rated game based off of Ant-Man, for instance, then you're going to make an E-rated game based on Ant-Man, or they will get rid of your contract. And again, this is the point where we talk about the amount of control the license holder has over their properties. And most often when I spoke with John, we mentioned this, that they will keep track of what you're doing. They'll probably want monthly or quarterly reports to let them see what you're working on. And if you're not keeping track, or you're not keeping your end of the deal, they're going to get rid of it, and they may actually hold you in contempt for that. But the cons are mostly outweighed by the pros here. Now, the problem, though, is whenever your game is built on someone else's IP, and taking this back to the topic here, it gives it a ticking time bomb as to how long you can support for. Because, again, no license holder is going to give you an indefinite extension of your rights. They want to keep that back and give it to somebody else, or they may just not want that floating around. Because what happens if your company goes under and somebody acquires your rights? Because again, during the 90s, and one of the issues we see with GOG is that a company goes under, the rights to a specific game or property get bought by somebody else. That company may either liquidate or go or sell it to somebody else, who then gets that right, and then the rights may be given to some random person somewhere in United States to a game, and you don't know who has it, so you can't work on it or support it. And like we said, like, it's always great to see these brand games, especially when they turn out to be good, like with X-Men Origins, or what was it? No, Wolverine Origins, whatever it was called. But when that game can no longer be played in a few years from now, it just kind of sucks to see this happen, especially given all the work that was done to make this game in the first place.